All right, it's time to dive down the rabbit hole again. This time, like usual, it's about our food and how it's being molested and adulterated without our consent. And these people, they basically just come in, they do whatever they want. They market the food to us. We go to the store, we buy it. It destroys our health. And then we're left trying to pick up the pieces and find the answers. Welcome to Apex. My name's Jacob. And in this video, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. Supermarkets have partnered with Arla to test methane-busting feed additives for dairy cows. All right, so there are 3 supermarkets in question: Morrison's, Tesco, and Aldi. So what they're doing is they're rolling out this feed additive for dairy cows, and it's called Bovaer. And essentially, they're feeding it to these cattle, and they're basically doing a test run. There's like 30 farms that are involved out of 9,000. They're giving the cows this feed additive, and basically using us as test subjects. They've done some testing on this stuff. Come to find out, there are some concerns with it, and now they've just decided, you know what, let's see how we can add it to the feed. Let's see what this does. Let's try it in 30 different farms, and let's start selling it to the masses. And their plan, once this test phase is done, is to roll this out across the board, like in all countries. They're going to roll it out to try and hit this global methane pledge, which has targeted a 30% reduction in methane by the year 2030. So that's what this is all about, and it's all in the name of climate change. So whether or not you believe in climate change or not, that's completely irrelevant. What is relevant is that they're doing this to our food. There are potential side effects, and they're not telling the customers about it. There's no mandatory labeling on any of these products they sell, and there are a lot of products, which we're going to go over. And, they basically just put it on the grocery store shelves. We go in there. The average consumer has no idea this stuff is in there. And it's a 50-50 chance on whether or not it negatively affects our health. So there are some very major potential concerns with this food additive and the things that it can cause in humans. So it can be harmful if inhaled. It can cause skin and eye irritation. It can cause benign tumors in females. That seems like something we definitely want to be consuming. And it has also been shown to cause damage to male fertility and reproductive organs. Everybody could use some benign tumors and some reproductive organs that are non-functioning. I mean, reproductive organs, they're only good for keeping our population from collapsing in on itself. That's not a big deal at all. Toxic masculinity is a huge concern in this country anyway. I mean, we need more feminine males, as if we don't have enough already. We need some more. There's too much estrogen in females going on. We got to spread some of that to the males, more than what we already have. That's a big thing. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and roll this out anyway. It's not a big concern. There's also risk of genotoxicity. Okay, that has not been fully clarified, so they don't know exactly what it's going to do, but maybe after this trial they're doing, maybe they'll find out a little bit more about that once they use this as guinea pigs. They could not conclude the safety of the additive for any other animal species. You got to wear protective gear, including a dust mask, gloves. You got to wear eye protection, wash hands after using. All this stuff, this is stuff that the animal is consuming. It's going in the animal, and these animals metabolize this stuff. So it's going throughout the animal. And for them to say that there's no risk involved, there actually is risk involved. And you can read through the actual documents that will show you that there is risk involved. But as you'll see by reading through these articles, they tested this stuff on mice, dogs, rats, monkeys, and cows. All right, so you can clearly see here that the effects were observed in the testes of rats exposed to 3-NOP, which is the active ingredient in this Bovaer food additive. And it's such a wonderful thing. They're testing these toxic substances on all these helpless animals. And I think the solution to this is very simple. Don't create toxic food additives for cows trying to reduce methane emissions, and you won't have to test this stuff on animals to see how it affects them. Let a cow eat grass. Let it eat a natural diet of grass, and you don't have to sit there and torture animals. I mean, this stuff they do is absolutely disgusting, and all in the name of trying to, basically reduce a natural gas that's found in the atmosphere that volcanoes put off more of than anything else on the planet, and like swamps and stuff like that. Trying to claim that that's causing climate change, thinking that we can just outsmart nature, that we're smarter than nature. We're going to come in here, and by feeding cows this synthetic food additive that's going to poison the population, we're going to solve this problem. These little specks of dust on a planet that is this big are somehow that little speck. Even if you take all 2 billion cows and you stick them on the planet, it's literally a speck of dust, like bacteria. And you're going to tell me that those cows are contributing to methane and is causing climate change is absolutely absurd. It's absolutely absurd. That's all I'm saying about that.
The animals are not going to make any difference to global warming. Like none.
No,
Zero.
it's
Zero.
horseshit.
Suppose zero is nothing.
Do you think that that's just propaganda because of people that have a vested interest in like plant-based meat products and things along those lines, green energy?
I think it's part of it. You know, you're generally going to get people pushing to avoid meat. Like some people just, you know, maybe they've got a financial interest. Maybe they're just like vegetarians or vegans or whatever.
Ideological interest.
Ideological reasons. But it's not going to make any difference to global warming or, you know, the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, really, if people eat fewer steaks. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Irrelevant. I want to just be super clear about that.
Yeah.
Will not matter. You will not even be able to measure it. Okay, that's how irrelevant it is.
Isn't it funny that that's
unmeasurable? That's irrelevant.
And this is one of those things where like they'll feed it to us and people will consume it, and then 20, 30, 40 years down the road they'll be like, oh man, we screwed up. That was kind of a bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. And we see that all the time, like fluoride, brominated vegetable oil, tar flour, human waste used as manure, which now has been shown to contain tons of PFAs and is basically wiping out cattle farms all over the country. And you can see that right here. Texas farmers say sewage-based fertilizer tainted with forever chemicals poison their land and kill their livestock. You know, this was another in the name of the environment and climate change thing. They start using this toxic waste that is, you know, coming from humans, and they start pouring it all over the fields, using that as a synthetic fertilizer, or using that as a form of fertilizer on crops, monoculture, of course, and it runs off and kills hundreds of animals, fish, cows, all this stuff. But somebody somewhere thought this was a really freaking good idea, so they did it. You know, they didn't ask for permission. They didn't go to the farmers and they didn't say, hey, do you care if we put this disgusting fertilizer on the farms next door and see what happens to your livestock? They didn't do that. So now this guy's suffering the consequences. And if you think about the impact it's having on his cows, we are consuming the food that they are putting that fertilizer on. Okay, I want to make that very, very clear and very distinguished. That stuff is going on food that we consume. Okay, and it's killing cows, killing livestock, and we're consuming that food. Wheat, soy, corn, like all the monoculture you can think of, that's what this stuff is being used for. And these are the impacts from that. So I'm sure that this Bovaer, this bright idea that somebody had, is going to be a fantastic thing. All right, and then the list of foods that contain all this stuff is also in these articles. So we're going to go down, we're going to find that. So you can see Starbucks is even one of them. All these different brands, McDonald's, Eco Milk, Tesco, Aldi, Lidl, Iceland, Marks and Spencer's. I've shopped at a lot of these places when I was overseas, and I shop at Aldi here. But I can tell you that will not happen anymore. And there's a lot of people boycotting this, like to the tune of hundreds of thousands of people are seeing this and they're boycotting it, as you can see in these articles. I 100% stand with them because they're doing this without our consent. This stuff has not been properly tested, and they're essentially using these 30 farms and the people that consume this food from these 3 retailers as guinea pigs, as test subjects. And I personally refuse to be a part of that. All right, and then this article here from the People's Voice, it says Bill Gates' new feed additive, Bovaer linked to melt infertility and reproductive damage. Bill Gates doesn't have anything to do with this. He backed and funded Rumen 8, which is rumen with the 8 at the end. It is not this one, but that doesn't make this any less bad. And that Rumen 8 is basically the same thing, and when that rolls out, I definitely won't be consuming products that come from that either. But what I like about this article is when you go down here, you will see from Bovaer 10, this is actually it looks like an MSDS or an SDS or something similar, but it talks about the active ingredients, and then it also talks about the cautions and the warnings. And you can see, for lactating dairy cows only, not for use in dry dairy cows, bulls, replacement heifers or bulls, growing cattle, or other ruminant species, because the safety and effectiveness has not been properly evaluated in these animals. Which is 100% true, because this has not been fully tested. Again, this is like a testing phase that they're doing, and they're allowing people to consume it while they do their tests. And then down here for warnings, you can see not for human use. Caution should be exercised because it could cause damage to male fertility and reproductive organs, potentially harmful when inhaled, is a skin and eye irritant. So, I mean, as you can see, this stuff is not benign. It is not without risk. And the animals are consuming this, and then we're consuming the animals that eat that. And it's something I talk about in this channel all the time. You are what you eat. your body is a direct reflection of the things that you put on your skin and what you put in your body. And that is no different from any other animal. What these animals consume, just like with us, is a direct reflection of their health. So something to keep in mind here is that these articles talk about the dairy products that come from Arla. And that's going to be pretty much all dairy products, I would assume, because I don't think they're going to separate this milk. Like if you have milk coming from 30 farms, it's just like with the food here. That milk or that food or that ingredient, whatever it is, that product is going to go to a factory and it's going to be mixed in with all the other products. It's the same thing with our beef supply. It's the same thing with grains, all that. Like you get a burger patty, it could have 30 different cows in there just because it's all getting put in one big grinder and it's getting pushed out as hamburger. And that's no different with milk. So if you have milk coming from, these 30 farms, when it gets to the factory, it's probably going in all the products. So any Arla product or any of the products that are mentioned in these articles are probably going to be affected by and tainted by milk that has come from animals that have consumed this food additive. All right, but beyond that, and this is a big point I want to get to, is that this article here will tell you, if you don't know this, that when dairy cows are expired and they're no longer used for dairy, they're no longer used for milk, they are sent to the slaughterhouse and they are used as beef. And that is true for here in the US. It's true for just about every other country. So all these dairy cows from these farms, once they get too old to produce milk, they're going to go to the slaughterhouse. And just like I mentioned, that beef is going to go in with all the other beef and it's going to get ground up and that's going to be in the food supply. So this does not stop at milk. This is going to be affecting everything when it comes to commercial beef from any company and any grocery store that chooses to use this either now or in the future. And as I mentioned before, the UK fully intends on mandating this, and I'm sure this will be a mandate for other places as well, because usually it starts over there and it trickles down to everywhere else, because the UK is not the only one that is pledged to meet this 30% reduction of methane by 2030. There are a bunch, I want to say like 100 different countries that have pledged this. All right, so this is very, very important here. And then speaking of that, here's a couple articles from May of 2024 and one from April of 2022 that talks about how the FDA has completed review of the Bovaer first-in-class methane-reducing feed ingredient for the U.S. dairy industry. And you can see in this article where Elanco and Royal DSM created a strategic alliance in the U.S. for this Bovaer product. So again, this is not going to stay in the UK. This is not going to stay overseas in Europe. This is going to be rolled out all over the place. Any place that has pledged to this 30% reduction of methane emissions is going to be affected by this. Now, with that said, I'm not trying to convince anybody not to buy this food. I'm simply sharing the information so that everyone can make an informed decision when they walk in the grocery store. They know what they're buying. Because this stuff is not going to be labeled. It's not going to be on the package. There's going to be no sort of requirement that lets the consumer know that these animals have consumed this food. And you'll go in there and you'll buy it and you won't know. So that's all I'm trying to do is share this information while also expressing my concern, which my opinion is worth whatever you want to take it for. For me personally, I will not be buying any of these products. I will not be shopping at Aldi's. And any grocery store, any distributor, any company that backs this, that provides food from animals that have consumed these additives, I will not be buying. To me, it's very simple. Get back to the basics. Cows are not destroying the planet. I live in an area of the country where there are cattle farms all around me. And somehow, even with all these animals out here spewing methane everywhere, this area happens to be one of the most green, lush, and beautiful places in the state. Now, that's not to say that there's not a lot of improvement that can be done in the cattle industry, but the best thing we can do is get back to the basics and source our food as often as possible from our local communities, from our farms, ranches, local businesses, and that is going to get us away from the industrial food complex, the exact industrial food complex that is causing all these problems that they are claiming that we have, even though most of their policies and mandates prop those industries up, and they allow them to proliferate, and they lead to the destruction of more local family-owned farms and businesses. And that's the most fundamentally important thing. When we can get away from these large industries, the industries that do all this crazy stuff that we never agreed to, and we get back to local farms and ranches, we don't have to worry about this stuff. We don't have to worry about going in the grocery store and buying something that is going to be potentially harmful to us. Because when we buy from local producers, we can see exactly where our food's coming from, It's out in the fields, walking around right in front of us, and we have full transparency about our food. And that's the best thing that we can do for ourselves to improve our health and to ensure that we do not support and back these industries that do not have our best interest in mind. Be sure to leave a comment down below and share your opinion, because I am very, very curious to know what you guys think about this. So if you're looking for a local producer in your area, I created a farm map that is, to my knowledge, the largest animal-based farm map on the web. There are over 7,200 listings on there. I'm going to put a link in the description below to my website. You can go on there and access this map. It is 100% free to use. Please use that. That's what it's there for. And see if you can find a local producer in your area so that you have more transparency on where your food comes from, so that you don't have to rely as much on these big industries that do not have your best interest in mind.